Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and I get to talk to the people who made history. And today is history for me. You get to meet the people who were here before I did, the people who had TV in their minds. They thought it could happen, Better Life Television. And you get to meet them all three today. I'm going to ask them to interview one another, because this is Delmer, and this is Bob, and this is Olen, and none of them brag very much about themselves. So I figured out, I'm going to ask Bob to tell me about Delmer. You're on.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Delmer, he's a great friend. And we moved to Grants Pass from Eugene in 1986. And it wasn't long after we arrived here. We arrived in the fall, and they had a ham radio get-together down at Monterey Bay Academy, which is down near, what is it, Wilsonville or Watsonville, down south of San Francisco, and over the ridge and on the ocean there. It's a boarding school, and I learned that Delmer was going to go to this ham radio meeting. And since I'd been a ham radio operator for years, was a radio operator in Brazil and then out in the Orient and Singapore. And I thought, you know, it'd sure be nice to go down there. And so I said, Delmer, my wife and I would like to go down to the Ham Radio Fest. When is it? And so he told me all about it and encouraged me. He says, you know, we got a big car. Why don't you just ride with us?
Oh.
And so we got in the car with them, and it was my wife and my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, and we all three sat in the back seat, and Delmer and Evelyn sat in the front seat, and we traveled all the way down there. Well, it's just north of Monterey, California. And we had such a good time down there, and found out that Delmer had been a ham radio operator for quite a few years, and we just really enjoyed each other's company. And little did I think then that someday we might be working together, founding a television station.
Because that's what we're here to talk about, is that television station. Olen, why don't you tell me about Bob?
The first time I met Bob Heisler, my wife and I were delegates to the North Pacific Union Conference, to the constituency meeting. Mm-hmm. And we were going to eat breakfast at Kellogg Hall, which is the dining room at Walla Walla University.
College, yep.
University now. Used to be college when I was there. Anyway, you and Nita, your wife, were sitting at a table, and we looking for a place to sit down and eat. And you introduced yourself, and that's before you ever came here as a pastor.
That's right. That's right. We had the call, but we hadn't come yet.
And of course, you lost Anita, but one day you were at your wife attended Thunderbird Academy, which when I went there, it was Arizona Academy before it was ever called Thunderbird. And so we had something in common there. And I think you stayed the night with us, and we had a good time together. And anyway, Delmer chose you. I guess you were chosen to be the president of our television broadcasting, our television company.
Now, you had a vision that this would work.
Yes, I thought it was a good thing. That's why when Delmer asked me to be a part of it, I volunteered. Yes, I would be. Yeah. And I don't know anything about television. I don't know the works of it. But anyway, I thought it was a good thing to give people different, you know, we were set up to do so much for the families and the children, and so many different type of programs that would make a better life for people if they watch. And so I decided to be a part of it.
Well, Delmer, why don't you tell me about how you met this guy.
Well, I knew Olen for a long time, actually. I was at college the same time he was. He was ahead of me, but he knew about me, I think, and I knew about him, so that's how we knew each other to start with, and then we came down to Grants Pass, and he was asked to be part of Better Life Television. He was one of the first board members, and I know Olen has been very helpful all the way along. He's been very supportive in financial as well as other ways. He helped build the Better Life Television studio.
You mean right here where we're filming now?
Well, it wasn't quite this big at that time. So, so anyway, that's how I got acquainted with Olen.
This was the backyard.
Yeah.
This was.
It's grown a lot since the early
Yes.
days.
And because the first station's where, Bob?
Oh, it was we were building a new school, elementary school. Actually, it was 10th grade school, and they let us have a part of one of the rooms in the school. And we actually moved into that before the school was completed. The roof was up, the finish work wasn't done when we moved into that room, and that was back in 1990, I believe.
Now the street name is Heidi
Lane.
in Grants Pass. Why is it Heidi Lane?
Named after my granddaughter.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
And
That's
Olen, we're just so grateful because you've had a part all along. Now, Olen, his part is different than your part and your part. Delmer, just tell me a little bit about where you got this wild dream that it could even happen in this hilly country.
Well, we saw a program, well, it was one of our friends told us about this program that was on, that was an Adventist program. I wasn't even familiar with it, but he told us about the program that came on once in a while. It wasn't running full time, it was just come on occasionally, and so...
You're talking Three Angels Broadcasting?
That's right.
Was
It was
that
Three Angels Broadcasting Company, and it was coming on once in a while. It was just
Back
when they
in-
first started
Chicago area?
in Illinois. So anyway, we decided to get a dish so we could get in all the action that was happening. We actually didn't have a television at that time, so we finally got a television and got a dish because we wanted to be in on the new things that were happening.
You've always been interested in new things that were happening, right? You have water-powered electricity. We just learned that you, as a kid, you and your brother were interested in
Yes, it was.
inventions.
It was. We had, when we were kids, we set up a water wheel in the creek that we had. It was up on Sykes Creek. It was very rural, and there wasn't any electricity in that part of the country.
Can you imagine being the only kid in your block with a light bulb? How fantastic. And how old were you then?
Oh, I suppose about 12 years old, I think.
And your brother, is he younger or older?
He's 2 years older.
He's 2 years older.
Mhm.
Well, when did you get interested in radio, Bob?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because one day the senior pastor of our church came to me and said, Bob, you've had a little bit of background with amateur radio, and we have a member here. He's an engineer, electronic engineer, and he's wanting to build a TV station. And I'd like to have you work with him in developing this station. And I thought, wow, what an opportunity.
And what's his name?
Delmer Wagner, of course. And so I called Delmer Wagner, and we made an appointment to get together, and Delmer took me out to lunch and told me about this idea that he had of of setting up a TV station that could reach all of Grants Pass.
Oh,
I
what
thought,
a
wow.
vision.
And you know, one Sabbath I was sitting in church, and all of a sudden I was dreaming about this television station, and it seemed like the walls of the church just started to move out in all directions until the walls of the church encompassed the entire city. Little did I realize at that time that God's vision was much bigger than my vision, because now we're reaching out to at least 3 states and around the world through the internet.
And how is that, the internet? How did we get connected with that? How can people in Africa and in Siberia watch what you just said?
Well, this was a developing technology back in those days. The satellite dishes were new to us. And you know, Danny Shelton had this idea of founding a television station that would reach the world. Well, come on now. You can't reach the world with TV. It only goes line of sight, and that's the end of it. You can't reach the whole world. It's sort of like the woman who was in New York, and she saw the astronauts go to the moon and land on the moon. And she said, I don't believe that that's true. I can't even pick them up here in New York. And they're saying that they're out there on the moon. Well, you know, some of these things are just a little beyond our small minds. We have to take some things by faith until we understand them. But Delmer was excited about this, and I've learned that Delmer, when he gets an idea in his head, he is persistent. I mean, he does not give up.
Well, he knows what he's talking about, or he wouldn't talk, right? We've learned that.
I hope that's true.
One of the things that Delmer did as an electronic engineer, he invented a meter that measures the moisture in wood and I suppose other substances as well. The latest one, I think, measures the moisture in concrete.
That's right.
And they can tell how well concrete has cured,
Delmer,
whether or not you can drive on it safely or not.
Delmer, what was the reason for that wood check?
To get the maximum money out of a piece of wood, if you're drying wood, you have to do it just right, because it's money to the sawmill if they could get
dry it too much, you spent too much money. If you didn't dry it enough,
yeah, it's was bad either way. So you had to get it just right. So we had equipment that went in the dry kiln. We had equipment that measured each piece as it went by on the dry chain.
What's the name of your company?
Well, it started out as Wagner Electronics or Electronic Products, and now it's called Wagner Meters, actually.
Meters, okay. Now, you've done quite a different set of things. You've been busy off building.
I use the lumber, but I don't get involved with how dry it is or how it's too wet. We just put things together and build houses. And
You're basically a carpenter, is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Your emphasis is on keeping people dry.
He's a builder. He's a builder.
He's a builder. He's
Yes,
not
and
just
he and his wife is a part of it too.
yeah, I help her build all these buildings.
Well, we've got pictures
That's
of
what I
this
tell
couple and that couple and the other couple because it's a 6-member in that team. Each one of you has a wife that has been by your side.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And of course, we've got pictures of your dear wife who has been a blessing even in her cancer. As she suffered and died, she was still a blessing.
That's right. She was.
Folks, if you don't get Better Life Television newsletter, just contact the station here. The number's on the screen, and you can get these free. I mean, every month There's stories about, when the ice covered the mountain, and you've had to go up the mountain in this ice and the dark.
Yeah, we've had to do that a lot of times. We've done a lot of scary things.
Scary things. Now, it all started out back in 19 and what? When did you have the dream?
1987 is actually when we first started thinking about doing the television, and 1990 was the first time we had a live operating station.
And most people, I'm not talking about these three, but most people said,
Oh, can't be done.
And
Can't be done.
they didn't have any faith in it. Well, they thought if they have so many missionary projects in our church already, when we don't have money for that, how are we going to do something else? That's one of the main problems we had.
It took quite a while to get pastors of churches that involved and interested in
That's
what
right.
we were doing, because they had to meet their church budget, and to take away from that.
you folks are talking money, money, money. Now, how has this just grown so enormously? It's been $5 here and $20 there, and now it's even, people are really generous. They've even given their jewels that they aren't wearing.
Well, when we started the Medford station down there, we had the conference president, which was, I forgot his name right now, but anyway, he said it's like a train, and we get it started and it keeps on going, and it can't, once we get it going, it can't stop. So.
Right, we have Portland watching us now, we have Reno watching us now.
Yeah.
Very soon San Francisco, and that whole area.
That was Don Jacobson, the conference president, and he did. He said this is like the little train that once it got started, they couldn't get it stopped, and his prophecy came true.
What's the viewing footprint? How many people do you think are potential viewers now?
Well, I hear that
1 million?
82% of Oregon's population can get a view of Better Life Television.
And all of Western, the west part of California, the Northwest.
Northwest, yeah.
And
the southwestern part of Washington.
And when these newsletters, folks, you really learn a lot about Better Life Television, and the price is right, but it tells about the expansion and the miracles, just the miracles. You've watched it happen, haven't you?
Going to these mountaintops to work on and different things, I think of Ten Pen Peak. The experience we had there, that was quite interesting, wasn't it?
It was.
We got in the helicopter and transported some materials so we could make the.
Well, first we started with a balloon, and then then they called the helicopter because the balloon went the wrong way.
So we went up to the helicopter. I didn't think the helicopter could make it. He circled around quite a few times trying to get up there, but finally made it.
Yeah.
That's
top.
scary.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah, and we had a young boy there that had never ridden in a helicopter, and I hadn't either.
I hadn't either.
But I had a little seniority there, and so I was supposed to ride in the helicopter. And just before getting into the helicopter, I looked at this boy, and I said, "Ever ridden in a helicopter?" "No." "Well, get in. I'll walk." And so he got to ride the helicopter, and 45 minutes later, I arrived up there.
Quite a walk. Quite a walk.
I rode
That
up,
was a
but
hike.
I walked down, and walking down the 10 wasn't that easy.
Okay. Now, how many mountains are you on? How many?
Well, I hear that of course, haven't been too involved lately, but I heard we are on about 22 total stations that are out there. But
Now, folks, you may be looking here and thinking, if these people have been doing this activity for 20 more years, you're right, none of us are young. And we are pretty excited about the progress that it expands and expands even beyond our wildest dreams.
You know, Bernie, there was a time when we were trying to get the attention of the cable companies. We wanted to get on cable because that would bring us access to the people who didn't have an off-the-air antenna, didn't get the signal from the antenna, from the air. And so we would go in and talk to the director of the cable company in various places, and they would act like they were pleased that we were on the air, and well, yeah, maybe someday we'll be able to do that. We just don't have an opening right now, but one day that'll probably happen. And that's the last we'd hear from them.
So how did you get there?
Well, Delmer, at our board meetings, decided that there was a way we could get on the cable. And that was if we had a commercial station, it would be mandated that they must carry. They call it must carry. If you're commercial rating, then the cable company has to find a place for you. And so every board meeting that we had for, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years, Delmer would bring up the subject. You know, there's a permit that's waiting at the FCC for a commercial station in Grants Pass. And I believe that if we apply for that permit, it will be granted to us. And I think we ought to try for it because that would get us on cable. And, you know, we listened to Delmer and said, well, that would be wonderful, Delmer, but that would be quite a bit of money. We're trying to get on in other places. We've got Roseburg to get on, and we're looking to getting on over in Klamath Falls. By this time, we were already on in Medford, and I just don't see how we can do it. And this went on for 6 months to a year. Every meeting, Delmer would bring it up. That's persistent Delmer. Because, you know, he had the faith that if we would step out, the money would come. And I remember one night as chairman of the board, Delmer, along toward the end of the meeting, he brought up the subject of a commercial TV station. And gave the same story. We need to be doing this. And after he had made his presentation, Olen chipped in and says, you know, I think he's right. I think we should do it. I think we should go ahead and apply for this TV station. And oh my, we did.
Once Olen has said that.
Once Olen had said that, we could see our way clear to go beyond just a dream.
Do you remember that there were 3 individuals who were also competing with us to get this station?
Well, we first applied and we didn't realize there was anybody else out there that was interested in doing this. But when we got then we finally realized that there was others out there, and they were doing it just because they wanted to. I think so. It was an investment for them.
Yeah. They felt that we would buy them out, buy their interest out if they asked for it. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So there were 4 of us, and so the FCC ruled, well, there are 4 of you that want the station. You're going to have to work it out among yourselves as to who gets it.
Yeah, that's right.
And the way that worked is, well, the highest bidder got the station. And nobody wanted to put out any money. And so just about 2 weeks before our time was to run out, one of those other 3 came up with the idea, why don't we form a corporation and develop it ourselves and then sell it to the highest bidder? Well, those 3, all they wanted was to profit from it. Sure. We wanted the station. And to make a long story short, we came up with enough money that they sold out to us. And it worked well for us because we already owned 1/4 interest. And they could sell it to us cheaper then they could sell it to anybody else because they would have got 1/4 less if they'd have sold it to anybody else. So anyway, it worked out well for us, and we developed it. Well, they turned the license over to us, and that was in September of 1981. And
What do you see as the future?
Well, the future was getting on cable is the best way to go if you can do that. There was a possibility of getting on cables. That's
yeah.
That was just,
And to make a long story short, it worked, and we were able to get on cable. But the one thing I need to tell you, Delmer was in touch with the FCC, and we wanted to move the station from one mountaintop to the other, and only about 6 miles apart, and you could line of sight between the two of them. And so he made the appeal, and the FCC said, we don't think that you can cover the same area with by moving to this other mountaintop. And Delmer says, well, I think we can. We've got a lot of low power stations that cover quite well. And so they said, well, we'll study it. And just a few days later, we received word from them that they had given a favorable response to it.
wow.
And you know, I was thinking back in those times, that was the second and third week of 2001. And you know what happened 9/11 of 2001. 9/11 happened, and I thought, oh my.
And everything fell together.
Everything is in limbo now. It's going to be months, if not years, before this is all settled and we're able to get we may never get this permit now.
Now you got to come back and tell the rest of that story. We're out of time. This is the way it was. This is the way it is a few years later. And this is what you can get by writing or calling Better Life Television. Thank you, gentlemen, for filling in the details. It's been a long road, and I thank you for your courage, bravery, and Delmer, we learned a lot about you. I'm Bernie Martin Beck saying thanks for tuning in.